the little township of Tarras is a 391-kilometre drive from Christchurch City Council. But despite the distance, what Christchurch Airport is planning here could have very serious consequences for Christchurch. Christchurch City Council owns 75% of Christchurch Airport. That means 75% of the reward. But also 75% of the risk. Right now, Christchurch Airport is proposing to build a significant jet airport in Central Otago. Industry experts estimate project costs being more than $1 billion. Christchurch Airport has already spent $45 million buying up land at around twice the market value. Now they are spending millions each year on moving their plans forward. But all of this is without the people of Christchurch having a say. No public discussion. No open debate in council. No sharing of detail or any in-depth information about the project. Let's take a closer look. Shockingly, despite the spend, there is no business case being shared by Christchurch Airport. Nor will they confirm whether they've shown a detailed business case to Christchurch City Council. Multiple community groups and industry experts have asked for clarity. Christchurch Airport's answer is that they are working on it. They say that it's too early to provide details. Yet at the same time, they say that the airport makes sense. Meanwhile, this publicly owned company is spending money hand over fist. By contrast, the spend on the Christchurch Stadium project has been openly discussed with the public and publicly debated by Christchurch City councillors. It has been discussed at length in the media and analysed in detail by experts and commentators. That's a project of around $700 million. Given what Christchurch Airport has told us so far, along with industry comment and analysis, it's fair to assume that the airport at Tarras will cost at least this much. No business case. Few answers. Little accountability. And no clarity. CEO Malcolm Johns has made it clear from the outset that this airport will need tourists to be economically viable, and lots of them. While there is some talk of seasonal freight and mention of locals wanting to fly, neither of these are likely to provide sufficient income to justify the construction of a large international airport. So tourist volumes are key. More planes. Bigger planes. Way more people. Christchurch Airport says that there will be demand and that this airport is needed. But there are 4 big issues with this approach. Firstly, Queenstown Airport's CEO has indicated very recently that Queenstown Airport will meet the needs of the region into the future. The airport has capacity, he says, for at least the next 10 years. Tourists can fly straight to their ultimate destination, Queenstown. So why would tourists fly to Tarras, over an hour's drive away? Secondly, there are 4 existing airports in the Lower South Island, each with significant spare capacity. Christchurch, Queenstown, Invercargill and Dunedin airports are conveniently located near population centres and tourist destinations. And Dunedin and Invercargill would love to see more tourists arrive directly to their destinations. Third, the New Zealand government has stated very clearly that we need to rethink tourism. It's not about volume anymore, they say. We need to take a new approach. And New Zealanders, including many tourism operators, agree. New Zealanders don't want to be flooded by tourists at 2019 levels. It's also clear that the environment cannot cope. And so, a new airport at Tarras runs completely against this new approach to tourism. Fourth, while there has been an initial bounce back in tourism volumes after COVID, the longer-term tourism patterns are still uncertain. Commentators have suggested that after any initial post-pandemic surge, international travel to New Zealand will change forever. There are many factors and it is still unclear how this will unfold. For all of these reasons, an over-reliance on tourist volumes to make this airport profitable is unwise. The Christchurch economy relies heavily on tourism. In 2019, nearly 7 million people travelled in and out of Christchurch Airport. But if Christchurch Airport builds a new international airport at Tarras, it runs the real risk of shooting itself, and indeed the city it serves, in the foot. Malcolm Johns, CEO of Christchurch Airport, has revealed that 2/3 of international tourists arriving at Christchurch also travel onwards to Queenstown. In contrast, less than 18% of visitors arriving at Queenstown head elsewhere. That means that a new airport at Tarras will reduce the number of international tourists wanting to fly into Christchurch. A new airport at Tarras could therefore be devastating for tourism and visitor-based businesses in Christchurch and Canterbury. Building a brand new international jet airport will create and encourage huge additional carbon emissions. The flight emissions, including from long-haul, wide-bodied jets, will be huge. Episode 1 of this video series covers carbon emissions and greenwashing in detail. Huge additional carbon emissions are not what anyone wants. They go directly against Christchurch City Council declaring a climate emergency and completely against its commitment to reducing carbon emissions significantly. For Christchurch, the new Central Otago Airport doesn't make climate sense. And for Christchurch City Council, as 75% shareholder, these huge additional emissions could ultimately become a real climate liability. To date, there has been no social license established in Christchurch to pursue this project. Even worse, 391 kilometres away from Christchurch, the people of the local communities have spoken. Tarras residents don't want the airport. Wanaka residents are massively against it. A group opposing the airport has grown to over 1,100 people and continues to grow. Even the regional newspaper has labelled the airport plans as reprehensible and greedy and likened it to a horror film. And despite the Tarras community calling for broad and regular community dialogue, Christchurch Airport refuses to engage. The last community meeting was held more than 520 days ago. Instead, Christchurch Airport chooses to talk to a few individual local supporters, some carefully selected businesses in the district, and has initiated a community fund to try and build broader support. But the trail of community concern, public opposition, and commentators who object to this proposed airport is well documented and unambiguous. This is not good for Christchurch either. There is no social license. Importantly, this is also directly contrary to central government requirements. The Minister for State-Owned Enterprises, in a legally binding letter of expectations, has directed Christchurch Airport that social license is an absolute must for the Tarras proposal to proceed. Because of everything outlined in this video, major shareholder Christchurch City Council is putting itself at huge financial and reputational risk. There's no business plan, despite a huge projected spend. The airport has already invested heavily and continues to spend on a daily basis. The project relies hugely on increases in tourism numbers, but these are uncertain, which is a risk. A new airport at Tarras may reduce visitor numbers to Christchurch and Canterbury. There are significant carbon emission concerns, and these will cost Christchurch in time. And there is a real lack of social license to go ahead with this project, both in Christchurch and in Central Otago. This project runs the risk of becoming a white elephant for Christchurch ratepayers. And nobody wants a billion-dollar white elephant on their books. The Christchurch Airport executives, board members and city councillors making these decisions today will most likely have moved on within 5 to 10 years. But the impacts for the people of Christchurch and indeed New Zealand will last for decades. The time to have a public debate whether this airport is right is now. This should not be decided by a few airport executives alone. And we ask whether Christchurch City Council should allow Christchurch Airport to continue to spend funds on this development, or whether it should be stopped immediately.
For more information, including detailed references and footnotes, follow the links shared with this video. All claims, facts and stats in this video are referenced for transparency. The impact on Christchurch is only part of the story. Be sure to watch our previous episode about the carbon impacts. In future episodes we plan to look closely at such issues as the business case, social license, political aspects, wider environmental impacts, impact on communities, demand issues, wide-body jets and much more. Stay tuned, and please share.